Welcome back to Sudbury Politics. It's our social distancing episode. We've got a bit of a skeleton crew. Rachel's off this week, but we've got Richard, but Richard disappeared on me here.
I'm coming. I'm just loading in things from the car. Sorry, I'm late. Sorry, I just got back to the store. What a zoo out there.
A zoo?
I'll just put this up here. Jeff, you were at PDAC, right?
I was at PDAC. I survived PDAC.
I got the last bag of toilet paper, but an old lady and I hit it at the exact same time. So we agreed to split it. So that's why it's all ripped up.
I've decided to never worry about toilet paper outages again.
Oh, you
went to our friends at Tushy. Got myself a bidet.
Well, I got a Corona. Oh, so do you. Cheers. But they're out of limes.
They are out of limes, and it's a sad, sad day.
It's a zoo out there. Oh, yeah. I don't even know. I can't believe the extent that this virus thing has captured everyone's attention. Yeah, you were mentioning that you were at PDAC. I mean, I was just at the grocery store. It's all anyone was talking about. People are talking about, yeah, when the factories all shut down and this and that, and we're all going to starve. I'm like, well, yeah, everyone just has to calm down.
Yeah, PDAC was interesting because mining in general is a high-risk environment. So I think the mentality of people that work in that industry is a little bit different. They're definitely very safety-focused. So you saw people, taking time to wash their hands, being careful about whose hands they shook. You saw even people doing this weird thing where they'd like shake hands with their feet as almost a joke, but like a safe joke, right? It seems like kind of the humor of the industry a bit. But, everybody knew it was a possibility, but at the same time, it was kind of a managed risk kind of environment. So people said, I'm going to go down there. This is going to be something that is possible, but I've got employees that rely on the jobs that I can build at PDAC. We need to continue this momentum forward. There's a lot of opportunities in the mine industry right now. So there's a hard drive to get the deals done this year.
And no one was upset about, the potential economic impact, or this kind of comes at the same time as this downturn in the price of oil. People were still, this is sort of a now turned into a report from PDAC where Jeff got the coronavirus or not. But were people actually enthusiastic?
I'm clean.
Oh, you're clean. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So it's interesting. This has moved really fast, right? So at PDAC, coronavirus was still something that was still just kind of coming into Toronto. So I think between the day that I got there and the day that I left, there was like an extra 20 or 30 cases in Toronto that just popped up. But before that, there was maybe 5 or 10. There wasn't that many, as the planning stages and as you were getting to PDAC. So some of that, people were still understanding that this thing might grow out. But the impact this thing has had and the weird levels of toilet paper hoarding to, absolute concern to this isn't it's almost you're on one crazy end of the spectrum or the other for this thing. And very few people are treating it with rationality.
Well, it's captured everybody's attention, and we're not a health show, and not even so much a current event show, but this is totally it's totally seized the entire political debate. Any story out there that's not about the coronavirus is going to be completely lost in the mess of this, right? So it's funny because I'm scanning the news and there's a story that's not about coronavirus. Yeah, not interested. Going to keep going. How do you try to get any sort of message at all out in the middle of this? But it's not like it's a quiet time. You got Tories are in a leadership race. The big primaries are happening down south. You know, the Liberals luckily the Liberals just finished their delegated convention, getting all those 2,000 some odd Liberals together to hang out. Maybe if it was next weekend, it would have been canceled.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that's interesting is you juxtapose Canadian politics and American politics right now. And I was impressed because I saw Doug Ford's conference, and somebody said, you know, how do you think the federal government's dealing with this? And he said they're doing a spectacular job. They're doing everything the scientists ask. They're doing, you know, everything that needs to be done. What we need the federal government to come on board with is making sure that we get our industry moving. He made some hits on them on the economy, but as far as the public health piece, it was do what the scientists say. And everybody wants to do what the scientists say. And that's what it should be. And that's heartening to hear. Where in the US, you're seeing, you know, these wild statements that, oh, well, the Democrats want this to be bad. Or, you know, they're trying to attack Trump. And like, he's making these crazy, crazy leaps that it's just bad for everybody.
Are the scientists saying to close the schools for 2 weeks? Like, that's the big, like, news of the day is that I'm going to have to find something to do with my 2 elementary school age children in the same boat as millions of parents who now are like, what? I just had these kids home for a whole week. Now I have to do it for 2 weeks on top of that? That is not going to be good for the economy.
No, it's turning the light switch off on the economy. Like, you look at the amount of events that are getting canceled, sporting events that are just done. You know, we're going to postpone seasons. But this school thing is just a kneecap because, you know, you look at the amount of businesses that's going to impact because parents can't, you know, find people to take care of their kids. They now got to go spend money to get childcare, money they can't spend at other places in the economy. It's going to have a really, really deep impact.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. And you can put on top of that, like, the concern that everyone's having about even just going to work. So, like, where's our gross domestic product going to go over the next month and a half? I mean, maybe that's why I was there in Toronto for SARS, which is sort of like ground zero in Canada for SARS, at least is the way I remember it. But I don't remember anything like this. I don't remember empty store shelves. I certainly don't remember school being canceled for 2 weeks because I was teaching school at the time, and I sure as hell was in school. You know, none of this happened then. What's going on? You know,
well, they're canceling events now. SARS, they threw a concert for 500,000 people.
Yeah, they threw, like, because the economy was so hurt for it. They're like, I know, you know, when this whole SARS thing is over, let's have this big, huge show.
No, they did it mid SARS.
Oh, it was afterwards. It was like in the summer.
No, SARS went from 2003 to 2004. The last case in Toronto was in June 2004 or 2003, and that's when they started the planning of it. SARS was not dealt with yet. They already started the planning. They planned it in a month. The concert was July 30th, and they had 500,000 people in Toronto. I had brought a busload of people down to it, and people were saying, "Are you crazy? Everybody's going to get sick at this concert, and it's going to be on you."
And then you're going to take the whole busload of them back to Sudbury. I did not know that. I thought it was afterwards that was like the Rolling Stones and AC/DC and Justin Timberlake were in Toronto with, like, I was there. It's like, it was huge. It was a massive concert. And we can't now, like, gatherings of 100 people or more are now being outlawed in lots of places. Yeah. So how do you do normal stuff? Like, how do you have a council meeting? Like, are they going to cancel the legislature? Like,
they just canceled the premier's dinner or the premier meeting.
Oh, the first minister's conference. Yeah.
So, you know, and, you know, people are saying, you know, we can do stuff like this, right? These Zoom meetings, and they're good for 1 to 10 people-ish, maybe max. But, you know, coming back from PDAC, the value I got out of that conference was the conversations that were 10 feet away from me, right? You're hearing all of these things that are happening. You're in the middle of other conversations. You put people together that it's like, oh, I just talked to this person about something completely different, but there's something that they said that applies to this. I'm going to go grab them and bring them over here. You put all these people, and that spin happens so fast that the amount of deals that are being made this week, next week, and into the next few months based on those conversations is massive. And when you take that away, it's going to hurt the economy.
I don't know how we recover from it, but the budget. So the federal government's got a budget coming. I don't think we even know when it is. Province's budget is coming up in just a couple of weeks, so I'm sure we're going to want to cover that then. Revenue, like the federal government was going to run a deficit budget for sure. We knew it was going to be a deficit budget long ago. How big of a deficit we didn't know, and how much are they going to try to move towards balance? We're not going to be able to move towards balance, and we're going to be downgrading all of their revenue projections for the year substantially to make up for this. So that means fewer programs, lots of stuff like, I work in climate change, right? So business doesn't want to talk about climate change, the environment, when their bottom line is got a red color. So forget all that stuff. That's
actually interesting, because one of the schools of thought right now is, even in Alberta, they're looking at diversifying their economy away from oil right now, because Jason Kenney's taken a beating over the drop in oil, and he can't just blame the federal government anymore, because the federal government can do anything they want, but they can't get oil prices back up over $35 a barrel. So
they can't stop the Saudis from stop the Saudis from launching a price war. That's even they can't think that that's in Justin Trudeau's power.
Yeah, so they're in a stage right now where Jason Kenney's already said we're going to end up running deficits, and that's something we're going to have to look at doing. But the stimulus that comes in, one of the arguments is do you use that stimulus to transition to the next economy, right? If the government's going to make these big investments to move things, do you try and save the businesses that were probably going to be in a lot of trouble anyways? Or do you go after the businesses now that are going to have a big impact in the future economy?
Well, I'm a huge fan of that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how much money in general they're going to try to spend, or if they have to collapse spending entirely. Usually stimulus happens afterwards, right? I don't think that we know entirely what the economic impact is going to be. I think maybe the oil price side of things may be a little bit more predictable, because you've got soft international demand combined with a dumping of cheaper oil onto the market. So we know that our $60, $70 a barrel oil from the oil sands isn't going to compete with a $35 barrel of oil from Saudi Arabia.
But as far as an outbreak goes, this too will pass, right? I'm not a virologist, but I do know that there's a timeline to what this thing will be. Whether somebody finds a cure for it, or whether so many people get sick from it that eventually, they get better and they develop immunity to the bug. There's a timeline to where this is going to have a heavy impact on the planet and on Canada and on the US and on the economy. And I think governments know that. So now's the time you've got an arm of the government that's planning, how do you deal with this so that you don't end up with so many people sick at one time that it overwhelms your hospitals. So you want to spread that curve out a little bit. And then on the other side is, what do you do when this thing ends? Because you just literally put the economy to a halt to deal with it. So there's going to have to be economic stimulus packages tied up in these budgets. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that was on the maybe table that's now on the for sure table. A lot of stuff that was already thought out that was driving things to something like a green economy that I think you're going to see pushed forward. A lot of infrastructure projects are probably going to get pitched forward. and there's going to be a bit of some dump trucks of money going out, which is good. It's what you need to do to get back over the
I'm not sure that, I mean, like I know a little bit about the budget cycle. I mean, this budget was a hurry up in the first place, right? So it's just talking about just focusing on the federal budget and process for a minute. The government was reelected with a minority in November. They didn't announce a cabinet until December. They didn't staff up until the end of January, early February. So, the finance department writing this budget is still actively exchanging planning with the ministers right now. Like, it's super late. Like, usually a budget, usual cycle is the budget's locked down already. Like, beginning of March, don't try to add anything to the budget. Nothing's going in. We're starting to write the implementation bill. Like, leave us alone. We're not touching anything new. All of a sudden, like, so the budget isn't out yet, but it's been drafted, and now you've just taken the revenue projections and thrown them in the shredder. Say, no, whole new set of revenue projections for you. So now the question is, okay, well, we were satisfied with a $4 billion deficit or $3.5 billion deficit. Now it's like, well, do we go with 8 or 7 or 9 or 6 if we want to cut a whole bunch of stuff, or do we go like forget about it and go to 12? Like,
what I think you'll see happening is some spending is going to end up on the chopping block that is an economic driver, right? Something like pharmacare, I could see being at risk now. So there was some commitments made. Deals with the NDP or things like that I could see the Liberals going over to the Conservatives and saying, look, like, this is big boy pants time. Our economy is going to be in a shit ton of trouble. We might have to take some of the NDP stuff off the table, but to do that, you guys got to back our budget, and here's the XYZs that we'll throw back into it: tax cuts, revenue generators, whatever that is. I can see the Liberal government moving more towards stimulus and tax relief, especially for small business.
I don't know, Jeff. If they do that, that's a real political risk. I mean, the government's in a tricky spot where they have to write a budget with a target audience in mind.
Yeah.
Target audience isn't necessarily the voter, although they're always in mind. Like, that's great. Yes, we know we have to convince Canadians this is a good idea, but in the very practical, real, immediate term, we have to convince a political party who is against us to vote for this. The easiest path to that is the Bloc Québécois. So if you can just carve out a whole bunch of money for Quebec, it's sort of like Jean-Yves Gaston, just name what's your price. My guess is his price just went up, right? And that also doesn't help, because it means you're either putting less into the rest of the country or running higher deficits, especially in a time when they do want to move money to Alberta, because there are, like, Edmonton has a huge unemployment problem right now. Other prairie towns and Edmonton and Alberta towns are in the same boat. And it's Quebec that's going to be, like, sadly, the ones that have the easiest route, because they don't have to talk much. They're just like, just give us the money and we'll vote for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be simplifying it a little bit, but really, I don't feel particularly ideologically driven to me right now. The Bloc Québécois is just going to put his hand out and say, satisfy me, or I'll, we'll vote against you. The Conservatives, they're going to vote for this budget. It's going to be an awful budget from everyone else's standpoint.
Yeah. But I think there is a reasonable risk to pharmacare right now. That's a huge budget line item that can be redirected into stimulus. I think you might still see a pharmacare, but I think it might be a pharmacare light. Like, we'll pay for your COVID drugs.
Yeah, sure. That's good for business too, is it not? Like, I mean, if the government is basically socializing medicine, that takes the pressure off of businesses to have employee-focused benefits in their expense lines.
But not in a short term, right? So you can make that case, but that's going to take a year, 2 years, because
how long to get it set up?
Well, and you have to wheel off of whatever deal you have with the insurance company now, right? So you've already signed a contract with your insurance company for the next 12 years or 12 months, or it could be 24 or 36, right? And they're buried into union contracts and all of that. So if the federal government came out tomorrow and said drugs are free, well, the insurance companies are going to say, great. And in our contract, it says that the government pays first. So we're going to let the government pay for these drugs, but you still owe us the money.
Sure.
And
I get you.
Right? So in the short term, it's not going to help a business. Meanwhile, if the government came out and said, we're going to give massive home improvement energy grants across the country, you're going to see tons of renovation businesses be able to put some money together. You're going to see a lot of spin-off jobs that come out of that. You're going to see savings to individual taxpayers that are going to spend more money, and you're going to see more money cycle back into the economy. If they put money into the digital economy and said, hey, small businesses, if you want to upgrade your websites and sell internationally, there's an opportunity there. So there's a lot of different things they can do to stimulate jobs that the government wants to hold on to, skill sets, right? That I think there's some benefits that they could run, but they're gonna have to act some things that probably were a good idea last month.
Well, the last part of this to touch on is just the local response. I mean, you're closest to this because, theoretically, people like Mayor Bigger are right now in some sort of self-isolation because they were at PDAC, some light scandal about whether or not he actually showing symptoms before he got tested. That sort of thing's kind of silly, but really, it's like, is there going to be a local level impact of the coronavirus outside of sort of the massive disruption to people's lives that the whole schooling thing? I mean, Laurentian's closed now, right? So you've got the students aren't getting out. In fact, some of them might go back to their communities where they're from, do their distance learning from their houses. Why not, right? So there might be some impact to retail there. And now we've got, we'll be looking at a lot of high school kids wandering around the streets for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, well, I spent a lot of time with the different profs from LU that were down at PDAC, and I'm still showing no fever. And I've been monitoring it. The health unit's done a good job. It's told everybody at PDAC what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. Monitor your symptoms, look out for a cough, look out for shortness of breath, make sure you're taking your temperature, see if you have a fever. And if you have those things, come in for testing. And, apparently several people from PDAC went and got tested early on, and one person's returned, sick. So the fact that a few people went and got tested, I think would tell you that probably this wasn't something that was like all over PDAC, and it could be this guy went out for lunch. It could be this guy grabbed some ice cream on the ride home. It could be, a lot of things on how this person ended up getting it. I'm just really hoping to get it from the hot dog stand outside of PDAC because I'm in trouble then. But, realistically, Sudbury's going to get some cases probably over the course of this. Federal government said 30 to 70% of Canadians they're expecting to get this at some point. I think the responsible thing to do is for everybody to practice good practice, wash your hands, keep an eye out for these symptoms. If you get sick, isolate yourself, stay away from anybody. If you even have an inkling that's high risk, and we'll get through this.
Yep. And afterwards, Corona will be sponsoring music festivals across the country. Right. Oh, my toilet paper fell. So make sure to watch out for Corona Stock at the KED featuring April Wine and, I don't know, the Headstones in, December of 2022.
I hope rationality comes back before December 2022. It sucks. Be safe. Do what you got to do to make sure that you're maintaining your own health and the health of the people around you. But for most people, this isn't going to be something that is of high impact.
Well, I'm wondering, maybe we just let it go and not bother with the letters today. We're already at 30 minutes for the show. What do you think, Jeff? Should we just raise?
Yeah, I think that's it for tonight.
Have a virtual clink of the glasses here. Good one. So thanks for tuning in to Jeff and I without Rachel tonight. Self-isolating. Jeff's going to go install his tushy now. I'm going to hoard my toilet paper. No one can have any.
I'm going to have the happiest bum in town.
Oh, thank you for sharing with that. And watch our Twitter feed at Sudbury Politics for bidet-related politics jokes to come. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll talk to you again, maybe even next week. We'll see when we get the whole crew back together after this whole virus thing's blown over.